2, and today we're going to be looking at chapter 2, text number 45, contents of the Gita summarized. And this section of Bhagavad Gita is, as it says, it's the contents of the Gita summarized, meaning everything's pretty much there in the second chapter. And we've just had an amazing verse just prior to this one. In fact, let's just recap on 42, 43, 44, just very briefly. We'll just read them. Translation of 42 and 43. Men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, resultant good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life, they say that there is nothing more than this. So this is followed by verse 44. Famous verse, Bhogaishvarya, Prashaktanam Taya Parita Chetasam, Vyavasayatmika Buddhi, Samado Na Vidhiyate. In the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination of devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. So this is setting the scene for text number 45, which we're going to deal with today. And we'll maybe go back and forward from those verses a little bit. So today's verse then. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Sanskrit for text 45, chapter 2. Trigunya Vishaya Veda Nishtrigunya Bhavarjuna Nidvanvo Nitya Satvashto Niryoga Shema Atmavan. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. The Vedas mainly deal with the subject of the three modes of material nature. Rise above these modes, O Arjuna. Be transcendental to all of them. Be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. Srila Prabhupada's purport. All material activities involve actions and reactions in the three modes of material nature. They are meant for fruitive results which cause bondage in the material world. The Vedas deal mostly with fruitive activities to gradually elevate the general public from the field of sense gratification to a position on the transcendental plane. Arjuna, as a student and friend of Lord Krishna, is advised to raise himself to the transcendental position of Vedanta philosophy, where, in the beginning, there is Brahma Jignasa, or questions on the supreme transcendence. All the living entities who are in the material world are struggling very hard for existence. For them, the Lord, after creation of the material world, gave the Vedic wisdom advising how to live and get rid of the material entanglement. When the activities for sense gratification, namely the Karma Kanda chapter, are finished, then the chance for spiritual realization is offered in the form of the Upanishads, which are part of different Vedas, as the Bhagavad Gita is part of the fifth Veda, namely the Mahabharata. The Upanishads mark the beginning of transcendental life. As long as the material body exists, there are actions and reactions in the material modes. One has to learn tolerance in the face of dualities, such as happiness and distress, or cold and warmth, and by tolerating such dualities, become free from anxieties regarding gain and loss. This transcendental position is achieved in full Krishna consciousness when one is fully dependent on the goodwill of Krishna. Translation once more. The Vedas mainly deal with the subject of the three modes of material nature. Rise above these modes, O Arjuna. Be transcendental to all of them. Be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. Om Ganatimirandasya Gananjana Salakya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Grave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, and my spiritual masters forced me to open my eyes with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto his lotus feet. So we had a subtitle for this verse, something to the effect of from conventional religion to transcendence or transcendental religion. There is a gulf of difference. We discussed this recently, that there is the your normal religious process. Conventional religion is focused very much, like the Vedas are focused very much, on the three modes of material nature, with the aspiration to gain some upliftment, some better situation. But that is more or less, in fact, more than less, focused on the field of sense gratification in the material world. The living entity comes into the material world with a desire to enjoy separately from Krishna. He has a desire for separate interest, and Krishna reciprocates by providing quite a few species of life. Vaisheshika Prabhu, I think, said in one of his lectures that he didn't just give, 8 or 10 or maybe a few dozen possible ways to try to enact your separate desires, but he gave 8,400,000 species of life. And we think how insignificant the other species of life are. We think the human form of life is where it's at. And in some ways it is, but in other ways it's just the same as any other life in 8,400,000 species. And we understand that we are eating and sleeping and mating and defending. And that is going on in all of the species of life. There's a process, the process of being born, the process of growing, the process of maintaining for some time, the process of producing some byproducts, the process of dwindling and finally disappearing or dying in the material world. So that is going on in all those species. And the modes of material nature are active in all these species, sometimes more by passion, sometimes more by ignorance, and a little bit of the mode of goodness can manifest. So this idea is there in the human form of life also. And the human form of life is a special opportunity for the living entity to go further with his activities into, Prabhupada mentions the word Brahma Jignasa, Atato Brahma Jignasa. The Vedic aphorism is there that we have to now, because we have gained this human form of life, inquire Not only where is their food, where is their sex, where is their defense, where is the eating and sleeping and mating and defending, but who am I? What am I? What is the purpose of all of this? Srila Prabhupada says that the thoughtful person in the human form of life inquires naturally. If he's left, he or she is left to the natural proclivity of the human being to ponder, what are these stars in the sky? What is this nature which is going on? Who am I? What is my position? This is the natural thing for the human being to ponder. But we hear and we experience, actually more experience, we are bombarded by other more important issues. This is the modern world. There's no peace. There's only agitation, advertising. And the most famous ad, most likely in the world, would be the Coca-Cola advertisement. It's the real thing. And we're thinking this is the real thing. Kellogg's cornflakes. I'm showing my age, but Coca-Cola is still going. I think now it's happiness in a bottle or a can or whatever it's put in. They've updated it because, like everything else in the material world, it has to be updated all the time. They actually, I'll share that one. This is an old one, but they did a survey or research, Coca-Cola company, and they spend millions of dollars every year in advertising. So they at one point thought maybe we could cut back on the advertising budget, millions and millions of dollars, and everyone's already heard that the real thing is Coca-Cola. So let's cut back on the advertising budget this year. So some bright spark had that idea, and that's what happened. They cut back, and you know what happened? Immediately their sales crashed. Massive reduction in sales. And they again were able to reinforce that, yes, we have to be told again and again and again. This is the way of the advertising. So that we're being bombarded constantly by the advertisements that deviate or take us away from the idea. Sorry, I just need to move something, I think. Yes. From the actual idea, atato brahma jignasha, we are meant to inquire into the things that I've already mentioned. Who am I? What is this world? What is my purpose? Why do I have to die? Why am I forced to grow old? Why don't I know everything? It feels like I should know a lot more. Therefore, I got to go to school. This whole process is going on. So human being is able to inquire, what is actually going on here? But being bombarded by all the other things, then we hardly get a chance because we're so busy. Just like if you stop somebody and say, my dear sir, would you like to look at this book? It's actually so important that I'm out here on the street just to be here with you and to give this opportunity to you. But I have no time. I have no time. I'm too busy. I'm too busy. I'm too busy doing the things that I've been doing for a long, long time. So the Vedas then, they are in a more quiet way suggesting different ways in which you could function in your human form of life. The Vedas deal, Prabhupada's purport, deal mostly with fruitive activities to gradually elevate the general public from the field of sense gratification to a position on the transcendental plane. So that is the actual purpose. And that transcendental plane has many, many levels. So we have to see that. Srila Prabhupada explains that the different yogis, as we'll hear, as we go further into Bhagavad Gita, there are different kinds of yogis discussed in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Astanga Yoga, and all the different yogis are known by Hatha Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, Raja Yoga, Astanga Yoga, and they are meant to make progress from one level further and further. And if one is not continuing to progress, he's known by the rung on the yoga ladder that he's achieved. So, and Krishna ultimately, we know in the end of the 6th chapter, he says, Yoginam api sarvisham madgatin antaratmana shadavan bhajate yomam same yukta tamo mataha. Of all yogis, he who always abides in me with great faith, worshipping me in transcendent loving service, is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all yogis. So it's just one statement that's made, but it's at the end of that chapter dealing with all the yoga processes. So the Vedas are meant to guide us to not simply engage in sense gratification. That's the immediate idea we will get if we just look at the Vedas. It's mainly talking about, let's go back a couple of men of small knowledge are very much, that's back to 42, 43. Men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, resultant good birth, power, and so forth. So that's the majority of the Vedic knowledge is very flowery, and it recommends that we should engage in these different activities to gradually elevate us, to take us a little higher than where we were, to become pious instead of impious, to perform yagyas in the mode of goodness instead of passion and ignorance. And there's a whole process. The Vedic literatures are also compiled according to the modes of material nature, just like the Puranas. There's different Rajasic and Tamasic Puranas, and then there's the Sattvic Puranas, the histories of persons who function according to the Vedic instructions, influenced by the different modes of material nature. And if we see this, it's also reflected in the 1st and 2nd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where the Lord's mercy, the Lord's kindness is so great that, just like we're hearing here in Bhagavad Gita, in a similar way in the Bhagavatam, it explains that, we've been discussing that recently, that in the beginning, try to come to this transcendental platform by seeing that actually the Virat Rupa, this universe that we're functioning in, is not separate from the Lord, and begin to see the Lord in all the different facets and aspects of the material cosmic manifestation. So Krishna is saying, if you can't see, just like in Gita, he says, if you can't think of me always, then take to this process of regulative devotional activity, follow the rules and regulations of Bhakti Yoga. If you can't do that, then give some offering of your intelligence or give money. If you can't do that, it goes on and on to lower the rope so that we're able to take the process. I think Atmananda Prabhu's lecture yesterday was on that sort of subject. Start from where we are, not where we want to be. So that's what Krishna says, to just start from where you are, and you will get to where you want to be. I'll say that again. Start from where you are and you'll get to where you want to be. So that gives up the cheating process. Dharma projita kaita vatra in the Bhagavatam 2nd verse. It says this Bhagavatam kicks out all materially motivated religious processes. It's not a process for pretension. So that's what the Bhagavatam does. And the Bhagavatam also in that verse, the 2nd verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, says that we have to become qualified. Also, the Bhagavatam qualifies itself as kicking out all pretentious things, and we also have to do that. We have to kick out all pretension and function according to who we are and where we are and what level we're at. And that way, we will actually be able to make progress. Bhagavad Gita says that also. Different places it says better to be an honest, that was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada. It said that better to be an honest street sweeper than a charlatan yogi if we're pretending. So it's very subtle. There's a difference between struggling to get situated properly on the spiritual platform, sincerely struggling, and pretension. So if we pretend, that will not bring a good result. But if we honestly endeavor, then we will get the result that we wish to gain in due course of time. So the beginning then of the Vedic knowledge is these flowery words, various fruitive activities, elevation to the heavenly planets, good birth, power, and so forth. And being desirous of such sense gratification and opulent life, these persons of small knowledge, they say that there's nothing more than this. That's the goal of life, is to go to heaven and to enjoy there. But Bhagavad Gita is the Gita Upanishad. The Upanishads, Prabhupada mentions that, where does he start to? That purport. Yes. When the activities of sense gratifying, namely the Karma Kand chapter, are finished, then the chance for spiritual realization is offered in the form of Upanishads, which are part of different Vedas. So there's Upanishadic verses in the different parts of the Vedas. In the different Vedas, there's certain verses there that give the indication that there is something higher than this sense gratification, which the Bhagavad Gita clearly states, Abrahma bhuvana loka purna avartino Arjuna. From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest of Arjuna, all are places of misery wherein repeated birth and death take place. So they're all summed up. It's all been summed up from the highest planet to the lowest. Repeated birth and death is going on. And Krishna then introduces, but one who attains to my abode never takes birth again. So this is the beginning of spiritual encouragement, that this is the actual idea. So in this verse today, number 45, that's what Krishna is saying. He says, Arjuna, the Vedas, as we've heard, just before we go to that, we'll go back to 44. It says, in the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, as we've been hearing, that's the ones that say that there's nothing more than this sense gratification with this poor fund of knowledge, Prabhupada would say. Such persons, in their mind, they become too attached to sense enjoyment, this desire for elevation to higher planets and increased sense enjoyment. And the material opulence, they think they become very lusty for that. If I've got $1,000, I want 10, I want 100, I want 1,000,000, I want 1,000,000,000. It doesn't end. And they're bewildered. So it's not that, again, we may need some sense enjoyment, especially according to our different situation in life, our age in life, our existential position that we find ourselves in, and material opulence. But we shouldn't become bewildered by such things. Bewilderment means that we lose sight of what is actually real. So this verse 44 says, the resolute determination of devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. So Krishna is going to, in this verse 45, encourage Arjuna to become established, become free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. So this is the great science, because it's actually a very simple process. Sometimes that word gets misunderstood as easy. Sometimes it's seen as synonymous, but it's actually not quite. A simple process. It's very simple. There is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There is the living entity who is his part and parcel. And by the linking process of devotional service, we can dissolve all our sufferings and reconnect with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in loving transcendental service, eternally full of bliss and knowledge. It's very, very simple. Easy, not so easy to apply. That will take a little bit of time. So the different yogic processes described both in Bhagavad Gita and more elaborately in Srimad Bhagavatam require great focus, and when we read them, we find that we become quite astounded at how intense that program is to control the breathing, to raise the life air through different chakras in the body, different places. It's said that the yogi has become so powerfully in that process that he leads through the I forget what it's called, the hole in the top of the head. I can't quite remember the name. Brahmarandram, I think it may have been. So he raises to the throat, eventually through all the different chakras, it comes up, and then it takes it through the center of the eyes, and then it goes up and leaves through that. So you think, wow, these people would, how can I go back home, back to Godhead? Because I don't think I could do that. So you can't do that. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, seeing this, Advaita Acharya seeing it first, and then saying everyone's getting off track here. I think we need you, my Lord, to come. And he comes, the Lord comes, Lord Krishna comes in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He gives this process, and he's glorified by Rupa Goswami and the great Goswamis of Vrindavan, and they are saying, Maho Mahavaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namani Gora Tvishna Maha. That you're coming and you're most magnanimous of all incarnations because you're giving this process, which is very simple process. But it also requires to be fully engaged in that process. Just like when Jagai and Madai were delivered by Nityananda Mahaprabhu, then both he and Lord Chaitanya said, now you must give up all of this sinful life. I will take, it's said that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became blackish in complexion after taking the huge voluminous sins of Jagai and Madai. But he said, from now on, you have to follow very strictly. When Haridas Thakur was tempted by the allurement twice, Maya Devi and around, anyway, that's another whole story. We won't go there. But when he delivered the prostitute who had been sent by telling her, yes, I will fulfill your desires, just sit here, and when I'm finished my chanting, then everything, your desires will be fulfilled. And then after 3 nights of telling her that she became completely transformed and purified. And he said, I've only remained here simply to deliver you. Now go home. And she shaved her hair. He said, give everything away to the brahmanas like that, and come back here and engage in this process of chanting in front of the Tulsi tree. So we are also required to become very focused in the process. It's a very simple process. And fortunately, we discussed this the other day too, that the different processes are there. It begins with Shravanam, then Kirtanam, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, this process of remembering, Vishnu Smaranam, Pada Sevanam, serving the lotus feet, Archanam, worshipping, Vandanam, Dashyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam, all the processes are there, the 9 processes of devotional service, so that we can be, as Srila Prabhupada said, 24 hours a day engaged. And Prabhupada didn't come up with this idea himself. It's stated by Rupa Goswami in the Upadeshamrita. He said that the essence of all advice is that one should utilize one's time, full time, 24 hours a day, in nicely chanting and remembering the Lord's divine name, transcendental form, and qualities, thereby gradually engaging the tongue and the mind. In this way, one should live in a holy place like Vrindavan and serve Krishna under the guidance of his beloved devotees. One should follow in the footsteps of such beloved devotees. This is the whole process. So it's an intense progress. I've mentioned this many times. So, but it's not too intense. It's just suitable. The process that we have is perfectly suitable for this age, these circumstances, and who we are. We can take it up. And then again, Bhagavatam shows all the different examples. Some people became, Maharaj Ambarish was expert in, he utilized all those processes. His tongue for vibrating, his mind for remembering, his legs to go to the temple, and all the different processes. Other personalities like Maharaj Parikshit is glorified for his hearing. He simply heard. And Sukadeva Goswami was famous and is famous for his speaking. He became perfected by speaking Bhagavatam. Parikshit Maharaj by hearing Bhagavatam. Offering prayers, Akrura is glorified for offering suitable prayers to the Supreme Lord. And so on. All the different processes are there. So we can take all 9 processes, we can take all of them, and we may focus more or less on different processes according to our position in this world. And we can become freed from all anxieties for gain and safety. Now, this is interesting. Srila Prabhupada does that. I remember many times that statement in 1972 in Vrindavan that Srila Prabhupada spoke. He said, everyone is struggling to gain something which he does not possess, and he's lamenting for something that he has lost. But when he himself realizes that there is nothing to gain and nothing to lose, that I have nothing to do with this material world, that is called Brahmabhuta, that is the Brahman platform. So this is the position that Krishna is encouraging Arjuna to seek, to become freed from all anxieties regarding gain, being anxious, struggling to gain something, and lamenting for losing something. These are the dualities of the material world, the happiness and distress, the cold and the warmth. Now we're moving into summer. But yeah, and happiness comes, that's nice, but don't become elated by happiness, because you know by experience, if we stay fixed in our experience, that after that happiness, distress comes. So after summer, the winter will come. And when winter comes, don't lament too much, because it will pass in due course of time. Be a little tolerant. Western civilization, it's not high on the menu of desirable activities to become tolerant. We want to become intolerant. I don't tolerate any discomfort, anything that tries to check or interfere with my immediate sense gratification. This is called prayas and shreyas. The devotee is encouraged to focus on the shreyas, the ultimate benefit. The immediate benefits will come of their own accord. And trying to focus on the immediate pleasures will not increase the pleasures. So better to focus on the shreyas, the ultimate benefits. And that is what Arjuna is being encouraged to do, to tolerate the dualities, to become free from all anxieties regarding gaining something or losing something. This transcendental position, the Brahmabhuta platform, is achieved in full consciousness. So full Krishna consciousness. Brahmabhuta prasanatma nasoshiti nakanshiti. Not hankering and not lamenting. Samaha sarveshu bhuteshu. Equally disposed to all living entities. Mad bhaktim lapate param. In that position of consciousness, not hankering and not lamenting, being equipoised in all circumstances, then mad bhaktim labhate param, one can attain to my pure devotional service. And Krishna reveals himself to his devotees when he is pleased with them for their transcendental loving service to them. This is the whole process. It is not by our work, just like in Damodar Leela, we see the same thing. It is not just by the attempt of Mother Jasoda to bind Krishna, because every time she tried to bind Krishna, she found that the rope was a little short. So she added some more rope and thought, I'll catch him this time. And he couldn't be caught. He couldn't be caught, on and on like that. But when Krishna saw the endeavor so much of his mother, who he loved so much, and he saw that she was perspiring and her hair was loosening and she was very transcendentally frustrated by the whole thing, he thought, ooh, I better be good. I better allow her to catch me. And so this is the way we are searching for Krishna. And we have to, Srila Prabhupada said that Krishna likes, he like the Guru and Krishna like to see his struggle, not because they want to see his quote unquote struggling, but they become very purchased by that sincere endeavor of the devotee. And then Krishna reveals himself to his devotees. This is the transcendental position when one is fully dependent on the goodwill of Krishna. That's the end of the purport for today's verse. This transcendental position is achieved in full Krishna consciousness. And what is the quality of that full Krishna consciousness? When one is fully dependent on the goodwill of Krishna. So whether one's faced with taptenupkam pamsa samikshamanam bunjana evatmikitam vipakam ridvagbapur vir vidadham namaste jiveta yo mukti pade sadaya bhak. A person who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy on him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions to his own past misdeeds and continuing to worship you with his words, heart, and body, certainly becomes eligible for liberation. What is that liberation? It's mukti pade, my feet, my lotus feet. They take shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord. So this is the actual liberation. Just like Queen Kunti, she's praying for that idea that by these difficulties, if they come again and again, I want them to come in again, because by experiencing these difficulties, we get your darshan, we get to see you, and my brain just went click. We get to see you, and by seeing you, we will therefore not experience or see any more repeated births and deaths. So that's the kind of liberation that the pure devotees want. They want to get liberation, but not impersonal liberation. They want personal liberation, because Queen Kunti prays in that way. I want liberation, the liberation, because when I see you, that is my liberation. When I'm with you, we are liberated. We feel safe, we feel secure. In that connection, we know that in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, when he was converted to Vaishnavism by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was the great logician. He was famous throughout the whole of India. He was the chief priest under Maharaj Pratiparudra in the Jagannath temple. And he did not have this understanding of the personal form of the Lord being the supreme understanding. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu revealed everything to him, including his transcendental form, six-handed form. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya became completely transformed, most to the amazement of so many persons. Prakashananda Saraswati Thakur, to Prakashananda Saraswati, he was amazed at how would this person who was so logical and so philosophical become become a madman dancing in the street and singing in a sentimental way. He said he must have come under the sway of the magic of this Chaitanya, this young sannyasi. So he couldn't appreciate. But he became so absorbed in pure love of Godhead in the personal form that when he spoke the verse, this Tatena Kampam from the 10th canto, when he spoke that verse to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he changed one of the words. Instead of Mukti Pade, he changed the last word to Bhakti Pade. And Lord Chaitanya was not happy. He was internally very happy, but he displayed a little this unhappiness. He said, you can't change Bhagavatam. It can't be changed. And he helped Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya understand that Mukti Pade was the kind of liberation that Queen Kunti was praying for, that Mukti Pade is the lotus feet of the Lord. So that is a name for Krishna, Mukti Pade. So this is the position, the transcendental position achieved in full Krishna consciousness, when one is fully dependent on the goodwill of Krishna. That whatever circumstances I'm in, be they good or bad, be they hot or cold, be the dualities of honor and dishonor, etc., all the dualities of this world, we remember Krishna. We chant Krishna's names. We discuss Krishna's pastimes. We serve Krishna in any of the 9 processes of devotional service, and therefore it becomes a rightful claim. Tivrena bhakti yogena manomayarpitam shtat. What is that verse? Tivrena bhakti yogena is the 3rd line. Tivrena bhakti yogena manomayarpitam stiram. That those persons whose minds are fully fixed in me and are absorbed in me, engage in the intensive practice of devotional service. So I've said this many times, but it's well worth repeating. If we look at Srila Prabhupada's purports, he uses qualifying words. He doesn't say bhakti yoga. He says tivrena bhakti yoga. The Shastra itself says that. And then Srila Prabhupada says, yes, 24 hours a day, following in the line of Rupa Goswami. And it's not difficult. Again, we come back to that point. We think, 24 hours a day, every minute, every second. We've said many times that was what Srila Prabhupada quoted. And the Bhagavatam should be read all the time. It's Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. We should hear the Bhagavatam all the time. We should chant all the time. We should remember all the time. All the 9 processes, all the time, as much as we can. 24 hours a day. That is the idea, to transfer ourselves from this miserable material world to the transcendental realm, which is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge. That's where we want to go. That's what Arjuna has been encouraged. Now become established in the self. Be freed from all dualities, for all these anxieties, for gaining something and lamentation for losing something, and be established in the self. That is what you're actually searching for. And that is what is available when we hear from the transcendental literatures like Bhagavad Gita and the various other transcendental literatures. So I'm just going to do a time check. We're 43 minutes in, which is fine. I'm sure I was going to finish off a couple of points, but didn't quite finish them. Please forgive me if I have missed anything. So we've come to this level of hearing in this international society for Krishna consciousness, and we are interested to hear how the great yogis in the past executed this process. We're interested to hear that the process has been very much simplified for us in the Kali Yuga, and we are very interested to hear that all the anomalies of the world can be directly mitigated by this linking process of Bhakti Yoga, and that the great sages such as Vyasadeva have given us this linking process through the Srimad Bhagavatam. And then all the acharyas coming from that have contributed their commentaries to all these literatures, on and on and on, till His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada has contributed these purports, which are just perfect for us to gain the inspiration we require to traverse this path that has been traversed for millennia by great personalities. And that, believe it or not, we can actually become Mahatmas. We can become those great souls who, and all we have to do is follow. That's all we have to do. Follow in the footsteps and engage ourselves in this process. And instead of being duratmas, which is cripple-minded, absorbed in the things which bind us to the material world, we will become Mahatmas, or great souls, broad-minded souls. And we may be able to do a little good for others, which is one of the very important qualities if we're wanting to become a Mahatma. We have to consider the other persons who are not getting this information, and somehow pray to Krishna to be an instrument in his hands to recite the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam for the benefit of others. So I'm going to finish at that point. I thank you all very much for being part of the program, for hearing Bhagavad Gita, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koda Vaishnava Brinda ki jai. Hare Krishna.